All right. Welcome to Design Lab, everyone. This is an virtual workshop series. Oh, wow. I'm really out of focus. Am I really out of focus? Or is it just
You
me?
are. Yeah.
Oh,
What happened?
I have no idea. Let me try to fix that while I talk about what we are. So we are a virtual workshop series here to provide the Gladstone community with ongoing training of a wide variety of design and illustration needs. We are your hosts. My name is Giovanni Mackey. I'm the creative director here in the communications team.
And I'm Tammy Tolpa, and I'm the science illustrator at Gladstone. You're still a
All
little
right,
blurry. Oh, yeah,
I
that
just hit
fixed it.
autofocus. That fix it? Okay, great.
Yep, you're good.
All right. That was fun. Okay, so Tammy, what do we have in store for today? We have as advertised, we are going to be talking about animations.
Mm-hmm.
This is rescheduled, so we're finally revisiting it, and I think we were pretty excited about it because we were gonna maybe bring some new tools. I think we touched on animations a few times, right? On some of
Yep.
these, and we've sort of previewed some of these tools I think before, but I think we're going to also talk a little bit about how to apply them, the limitations, the possibilities, that sort of thing, and try to get through a few demos to try to show just that. Okay, so shall we dive in?
Yeah, sounds good.
So
Yeah.
the basically here's my simple illustration, and for the concept here is that I could be introducing two components of this or talking about two components of this illustration sequentially. You can animate them in using the animation pane rather than actually creating separate slides um, to to uh, to create this. So they're all kind of contained on the same slide, and that more or less is that, and bringing emphasis to things, that really is what the animation tool in PowerPoint really brings to the table. I am actually
And I think most people are familiar with using the animation pane to do simple, like I see that a lot, like bring a bullet in, bring a sequence of bullets.
exactly
That seems to be a place that people are relatively comfortable working in.
exactly
Or if they're not, they're low barriers to entry, but then we have found some frustrations in working there.
I think the potential for adding like an extra layer of production value to your slides and to really make things a little bit more eye catching, and to keep your sort of audience engaged. I think there's like the potential there basically. I could sort of demonstrate that by literally duplicating my slides here in my slide deck, and I'll just I'm working on the second one, but I actually want this the end point. Excuse me, the beginning point. And I'm gonna start it off with like not having any elements in, and then I can introduce my first element, my second element, and then basically as I'm producing, as I if I play this, then one pops in and the following one does two. That's a certainly a very standard way. When I start to employ the animation, then I can kind of do that all contained within the same slide. I don't have to make multiples, or would you call that build? Where you're
Yeah, that's
creating,
like an
yeah,
old school build. Yeah, for sure.
exactly, yeah. So yeah, using animation tools, then you can go in here, and what I would do is I would basically just select the object or group of objects, and this is kind of key. You want to make sure that uh, you're organizing yourself well enough and grouping objects, because let's just demo what it looks like if these are all sort of separate elements. If I'm selecting all of these, and these are all these tiny little groups of elements together, I don't have these grouped. I'm going to add an animation because I want to introduce all those elements in. And I go up, first I'm going to open the animation ribbon. I drop down here. I'm going to add a fade. That's always something that I kind of prefer rather than just an appear. And it just adds just a little bit something extra to it, or a little bit subtlety to it. But when I add that fade, then you notice here that it basically adds it to every single object, and they all add here. Now, if I went through and I did this again to all these objects, you can see that kind of adds. And make sure you have your animation pane, by the way. You can activate it here with this button. This is how you really see what's going on with all of these and in the sequential order. but you can just see it jumps a ton of these in here. Not the preferred way to go. I don't need to animate all of these separately. And what's more frustrating, or can be a sort of pain point, is that the timing and the settings of all of these will then have to be managed individually. You can set them all here in bulk, but the practicality of it is that you do have to manage them individually rather than as a group. So in this scenario, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to back out of that. I am going to select this whole group, and I'm going to hit on Mac, it's Option Command G, group, and just pull all those together. And then I can simply add that fade again, and you can see it's only applying to one element. And that's going to come in on a click. So actually, do I really need that on a click? Probably not. I can do that. You can say with previous, but that's actually not creating any kind of animation. You can say after previous and add a slight delay on that, and then that'll bring that in sort of right after the slide appears, and we'll see what that looks like. So this comes in and you get a slight delay, and then that kind of is introduced. So an auto trigger for you on that.
So in this case, after previous would mean previous animation, but since there's no animation, it would be when you hit the slide.
Of the slide. Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. Yeah. When there's not a previous, yeah, it's just the slide introduction. Yeah, that's a great point. Thanks for bringing that up. And then I could just introduce my my next one, and I'll do the same thing. Select that as a group, add the fade, that comes in, and under here, under timing, I need to make sure that I do that on click, because I'm probably going to speak to the standard state of blood vessel and oxygen carrying blood vessel cells. And then I want to start talking about normoxia, or at this point. So to make sure I'm setting up those interviews, I'm going to make sure I'm at a click state rather than just it auto triggering after or with. And that's pretty much it. So I basically so this is obviously very simple. I can add these at two different intervals. And I can kind of that's adding a little bit more simplicity, but I think we could do better than that, really. And what I'd like to do at this point is actually kind of fade these in, or create a little bit more of a I don't know, for lack of a better word, a fancier animation, and add a little bit more production value to it. And I think I have done this in the past, or I'm going to say I know I've done this in the past, where I've actually stacked animations. But as we were discussing before the top of the show was offline, Tammy and I were trying to troubleshoot what's going on. And for some reason in PowerPoint, I cannot get those to stack. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. You can try it out on your own, see if it's just my system or what it is. But the concept would be that I can add multiple animations to one object. And in this case, I'm talking about introducing or sort of flying in the blood vessels into the scene, and then appearing, and then at the next state, the next ones sort of fly in. So the way that I would go about doing that is selecting the object that I want to animate again. I need to make sure that I'm not selected on the original animation I have going onto it. So I'm just adding here onto what I had previously done. But I'm gonna make sure that I'm not actually on that first animation instance. You can select that, either here with this animation point or in your animation point pane. Make sure I'm deselected, but I'm gonna select that object one more time.
Oh,
and yeah, and then under here, under path animation, I want to say I want to bring it in on a line path. And under here, it's right now the default is set to down. I don't want that. I want it, and I don't want it to move down. I want it to move in. So I'm going to reverse that path, but I still don't like. I want it to come along the blood vessel, not in it from below. So I'm going to set it to left, and it reset to the reverse. Okay, so I had to hit that reverse button again. So now at this point, it's sliding in from the left, but it's not.
It's not fading, right?
It's not fading the way I want it to. So I'm going to slide this guy up here. Right now, you can see where I added this animation. The stacking order of these animations are critical because they play in the order that they are. I want that actually to be the first event, and I don't want it to be click. I want it to be after previous, and let's add a delay on that. Say about a second. This second one here is my fade in, and I am going to keep the same delay. This is where it starts to get really complicated, right? This is where you really start to have to visualize what's happening here and correlate that with all the settings. I've got a slight delay on when the slide in is going to happen after the slide initiates. And then I want to match that delay because I want the fade in to also happen at the exact same time. And I'm going to have it with previous, but I want the slide in to say after previous. So I think with previous, there we go. And then, so let's see, here's the moment of truth. Will this actually happen? Okay.
No.
So no, it didn't. It failed. So what happened there is you can see, you saw right at the top there, and I can play it in this preview. Actually, I just played it full from a presentation, but you can actually hit this preview button. And you can see here that it appears, and then it sort of then plays the second animation. But okay, so fair enough. Let's maybe remove that delay, and maybe let's make that on a click event for that initial one. And then I'll remove all the delays from subsequent too. And let's see if that kind of works. Let's preview that again. Okay, so that worked in that instance. Well, that's something.
It did? Wait, can we see it again?
No, it did not. That it's sitting there. And then when I hit click, then it does the animation. So yeah, I don't know.
It just seems really buggy.
Yeah, right. Anyway, that's basically the extent of it. I can't quite get, I can just get one. I cannot stack these elements. It's very sort of complicated with making sure that I remember all these. So other solution, and one that Tammy and I are now big proponents of, is really leaning on the transitions, and specifically the morph transition. So let me switch over to this to another deck where I've kind of set this out, and I will I'll show you what we're talking about first. And I played this animation. So basically it's the same concept, but here we can get a fade in. The labels appear. Second to fade in and play.
Yeah.
And more labels appear.
So we're kind of abandoning that animation pane, right? And then we're kind of using the transition to get our animation.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll show you exactly how I did that. And how it's a little bit more intuitive. You don't have to necessarily completely rely on using the animation pane, the stacking order of those elements with no thumbnails and how they all sort of correlate. I can see much more visually what I have in each state. It's very similar to that build concept because they are at different states, but it's really it's then getting sort of a boost from this morph transition, where it's the transition has a lot of built-in features too that you just don't have to constantly tweak the settings on. So the concept is basically, let's just delete these guys here. Started off with the state that it's in. I'm also going to delete these animations here because I do actually am combining some animations with this. So we start with our end state, and that's important because basically we're going to create what you commonly might refer to in animation, which is some keyframes. So, there's this element here exists in a final state that I want it, and I'm going to basically walk it back to the points and that they would have, that they're going to originate in, so that way I know exactly where I want it to land. So in the first animation, I am actually going to I'm not going to want to see this guy, so I can go ahead and delete him. And again, I duplicated my slide, and I'm working in the first one, right? The second state is going to be the final state. And in the state that I want to be able to introduce this one as the first element is going to be, from the left here. I want it to go in, but I'm not, rather than working with this path tool where it kind of gives me a path, it tells me where it starts and stops. I can just move that element, so that way it's much more intuitive. And then my labels here are secondary. I'm going to group those, and I'm actually going to introduce those, and I'm going to start this gets a little bit tricky, but I'm going to combine the morph transition, and I'm still going to use the animation to be able to introduce these afterwards, because there are some limitations to it. So I'll put a pin in that for a second and wait for that. But as far as these elements go, I have them grouped. I'm sliding them off to the edge that I want them to introduce to. And in this state, I don't want to see them, and I don't want to put them all the way off the pane. I just want them to fade in subtly. So what I'm going to do is actually, in this instance, I want them to be invisible. So as I have this selected, I'm going to go into, let's see, go to my home pane, make sure that I have, or I can double click on this element. I get my format pictures pane tool. And I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to basically remove all the color and create these as transparent elements. So that way they're basically hidden on this slide. So in here, I'm going to say no fill, no line. I'm going to go into the transparency. I'm going to reduce that to nothing. Make sure I got all these elements.
Don't you want to show my best friend the selection pane?
Oh, yeah, it's true. You should always have that guy open.
Mm-hmm.
Selection pane is also so where I can see all these elements and
select them too.
Yeah, you can select them right there, which is exactly what I just did. I just saw all these oval parts, which I knew there were those elements. I can select them all, go back to the format pane, and again, hit no fill, and those disappear. So this element is completely hidden on this one. It is apparent or fully visible on this one. And so now, if I make sure that my transition is set to morph, and it is, then I can quickly preview what that transition looks like. And I can see my little fade in came in, and I'm just looking at that element, and I'm happy with that. So now the second part is that actually I don't want this element to appear on my first slide. It doesn't need to be there at all, but I do want it to appear on the second slide once that does slide in. So let's go in here to my labels, and here's where I'll select these guys individually. I'm going to group them just for simplicity's sake. Go back to my friend, the animation pane that's failed me before, but I'll give it a second chance and see if a simple fade in will do after that. And that is not going to happen on Clink. I want that to happen with previous. So that way, when this slide appears fully, these labels will appear. And let's give that a quick whirl and see how that did. So sorry, rewinding and playing it forward, enters in, and then the labels appear afterwards.
Yeah.
So you can see there that you can kind of stack some animations to be able to get that effect. You do the same sort of thing. I won't go through all of it for adding that to this third element here, because I think you kind of get it, and I want to jump to Tammy's demos too, because I think you got some cool stuff to also share. But
cool. So I like how you combine the morph with the animation pane, right? The best of both.
Exactly. And we also got to, you got to not use the best of both, keep it less complicated, but actually get a lot of production value out of that sort of experience with a very kind of simple use of both those kind of things. They're combining forces.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah. So I'm going to show a demo of a simple animation I made entirely using the morph. So we're really leaning into that transition, no animation pane at all. And I was telling Giovanni, I didn't even know about this morph transition because I tend to just ignore that entire panel because slide transitions are not my favorite. So I didn't even know about it, but now it's my preferred way of animating in PowerPoint. So really quickly, I'm going to play this animation, then I'm going to demo how I made it. So it waits for a click to start. And then now I'm not touching anything. And it's just a really simple animation of those Design Lab elements. So now I'll just walk you through how I made this. And it's going to piggyback on everything Giovanni said because it uses that morph transition. So we're in Adobe Illustrator right now. I just wanted to show you kind of how I set up my file. So this is sort of the end result, the finish line, although we are cropped in a little bit more than what you see here. And I just wanted to show that I've got 3 layers. I've got a layer of text, although I'm going to use text that's native to PowerPoint. And then I have a layer that's just a gradient. And then I have a layer that's my 96 well plate. And I just want to point out that it's got holes punched out of it so that we can see, something happening behind it. And so what I'll do really quickly is I'm just going to export from Illustrator to SVGs. There's a million ways to export out of Illustrator. So I'm just going to do this one, export for screens. It gives me kind of a preview of what I'm exporting. And then I've got, I think this is what it's going to name it, but I'm going to add a little thing down here just so I can understand which file is which. And then I'm going to choose SVG. There's a whole bunch of different options here. You could do a PNG because that allows for that cutout, that transparency, but I'm going to do an SVG. I think most of you are probably familiar with SVGs, but they retain that vector information. So it'll be crisper. And I do think it's a smaller file size too.
Definitely. Well, especially if it's graphic.
Yeah. And they're scalable vector graphic. So this is the location where I want to save it. So that's great. I'm going to export that. Oh, I'm just going to replace the one that I exported earlier. And then same thing with this. I'm going to do File, Export for Screens. And then this one, I'm just going to append the file name to be plate, SVG. Probably going to overwrite the one I did before. And then we're done in Illustrator. So I'm going to close that. And I'm going to go over to PowerPoint. I'm going to make a new file. I'll keep this one open because we're going to borrow some of that text. Here's my new PowerPoint file. I don't need this text, so I'm going to do that quick trick. So I've got a blank PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to insert both of those pictures, insert picture from file. And I'm going to go, here's my gradient. Here's my plate, although it doesn't look like it's been exported. Hang on. Oh no, why would this happen?
Trust it to always happen.
All right, let's see. Insert. Okay. You can see both of them are here. So I'm going to just shift click to select both of them. Now, wouldn't it be cool if they were aligned? They're not. I don't know why.
That's probably.
But I'm going to use my align tools here to kind of align them. Let me zoom out a little bit. Okay, so here we've got our one slide with our 2 elements. And my best friend, the selection pane. I got to move my zoom things out of the way. So over here is kind of what's similar to a layers palette where we've got two layers, right? We've got our gradient. I want this to be almost the full size of my slide, but you'll notice it's got this like border around it, this like extra space. I'm going to right click and I'm going to convert to shape. And this is going to be important later when we animate it filling in. And then now I want to make it almost the whole size of my slide. And then I'm going to turn on my plate. And then this one, I'm going to do format object. And I'm going to make this, see, like, why would it come in at 38? I don't know. But I'm going to set it to 90. And then I'm going to kind of arrange it so that I have about 8 wells showing and a little bit of white space over here. And you can see that my plate is going off the slide. And that's okay. I could crop it or I could just leave it because it won't show up in slideshow mode. And so if we go back here, right, still got my 2 elements here. And now I just want to duplicate. I've got everything positioned where I want it. Maybe I want this up a little bit more. And now I want to duplicate. I need 6 slides for this animation. So I'm going to make sure I have my slide selected, not an element here. I made that mistake before. Just select your slide and do Command D on the Mac. And I'm going to make 6 slides.
You're setting up your states, your different keyframes, for like
Yeah. So exactly like we saw before, we want to think of each piece of animation as has like a start and an end, and that's going to be 2 slides. So as you recall, that animation, it started with the plate coming in. So my first slide, I don't even need this little gradient. I actually don't want it here because if it were on here, it would just fade in. The morph transition is going to match up 2 things that have changed on 2 different slides. And if something is new, it's just going to fade it in. If you have an extra thing on your slide and all of a sudden it fades in, it's because there was nothing on the first one. So I want to make sure I just have the same elements on each side. And then this one, I'm just going to like push it off. I want to call it the stage, but it's a slide. I want to push it off the slide. And then I want to have it in position here. Then this is where I want to introduce my gradient, but I'm actually just going to like shrink it. So if I go over to my selection pane, I close or I collapse or hide my plate, you can see my gradient's here, but it's hidden again, because I need a beginning and an end state. And then
you can do that to that shape because you brought it in as an SVG, which is a vector base. And then you converted that to a shape. So you can really manipulate that element differently than you can say if it was a bitmap image or anything like that too. So that's kind of critical, right?
Yep, for sure. Especially when we get into sort of having it flow in.
Yeah.
We'll have more options because I converted that to the shape. So we've got our beginning, and then we've got our end. And then we just have to bring in our text, but that's actually going to happen. These 3 keyframes are going to kind of overlap. So I'm just going to go to my previous file. I'm just going to borrow the text from here instead of typing it in again. And if I use my selection pane, like Giovanni showed, I can just select all those real easily. Copy.
Yeah, just hit a shift click just to get a bulk items. Makes life so much easier.
And then, like he said, I'm going to go to my end and I'm going to paste them there. Oh, and then so they don't line up.
Of course not.
So I'm going to spend a little time kind of getting those where I want them. And maybe this is a good opportunity to kind of show the alignment tools. So if I select,
yeah, the eye is gonna
Yep.
Watch that eye.
Oh, I don't want to spell it wrong though. Right. Okay. So
yeah, there you go.
I'm going to select all of these. So I'm going to shift select these and I'm going to go to arrange, align, distribute horizontally. And I also want to line them up along their top. And then, I could play around with sort of getting them perfect.
Yeah, optically aligned rather than perfectly aligned.
But we'll save that for if there's extra time. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to kind of like distribute and align them. Again, I could, I would want these to be perfectly aligned.
That's okay, too.
Thank you. So we'll pretend this is great, and it's pretty good. So now I'm going to use the selection pane to select all of these, and I'm going to copy them here and copy them here. And then I'm going to make all my changes so that they appear as we want them to. So for this, let's see, for this one, we don't even want lab here because we're going to bring in the words design first. I'm going to select all these and I move them off this screen or off the slide. They're going to come in. And then this one, I'm going to select these and move these off the screen. Okay, we're close. We're almost there. Let's see what this looks like. But first, we got to set up our transitions. So I'm going to go over here to the transition pane. I'm only going to use the morph. I don't think I need to select the first one. I think I just select all of these. I'm going to select the morph. It gives you a preview of that first one. But what's really important is when you select a transition, going over here and kind of setting these controls here. So you can play around here, or you can trust me on this one, or you could do both. But I spent a lot of time sort of figuring out what my best option was. So for this, we want this frame to be on mouse click because we want the animation to wait until we click the mouse to start it. And then all of these, we want to be that checked off, and we want it to be after a certain amount of time. And then actually for this last one, we want nothing checked. And so over here, we've got a duration. That's how long the transition takes place. And then we've got this after, which means how long the slide holds until it goes to the next slide. So let's just preview and see what this looks like now. So it's waiting for me because it's got that on click. Now it's going to play. All right, so not bad, right?
Yeah, it's happening.
Yeah, it worked. So now we can go into these settings and just kind of play around with it. So one thing I'm going to do is maybe I'll make this plate come in a little faster. Now this frame, as you recall, this is just where we introduced, but we're hiding our gradient. This thing, we just want to be as quick as possible. I think that's the smallest duration we can get. And then it's going to quickly go to the next slide. So that's as good as that's going to get. This one is where, this is the duration of the, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to reiterate. So duration is the length of time for the transition. So how long the animation is happening. Yeah. And then the after period is how long basically you're going to sit on that slide after it loads in.
Right. And before it advances. Yeah. Right. Because we're not using the on click to advance. So it's like how long it's going to hold or pause before then advancing.
And this is kind of great. I mean, I love that you pulled this together because this is such a little used feature of it, but I think it's such a cool way to create a autoplay. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So a couple other things. So we've kind of sped it up. This is how long that gradient is going to grow. So maybe we can keep it at that, but I'm going to hide my plate and let's go over here. So, you can hide these things, but you do have to show them, or I think your slideshow will still have them hidden.
Yeah.
So we have our little gradient here, and then it's going to grow to become this gradient. I'm going to right click and edit points. And so this can get really messy really quickly. But I think if you do it with really simple shapes, it can be really effective. And it's called a shape tween. Basically, the morph transition is going to change the shape. And so I did that right click to edit points, and I get these little handles. And so I'm going to just play around with this. I did learn that we definitely want it to be like pretty big and off the screen, because as we know, there's a gradient behind here, and it's gonna keep morphing if they're different. So let's show our plate again. Okay, so let's see what this looks like. Let's preview this. Again, waiting for me. Here it goes. That came in faster. So that kind of did like a shape sort of thing.
Yeah, wiped in is a little bit more something special. That's for sure.
Yeah. So, it could, one thing you could do is you could spread that out over 2 slides where you could maybe have it stop. Let's do that. Well, I'm afraid I'm going to break my animation. But you could break that up over 2 slides where maybe it went from our little rectangle to something kind of wavy and then to this, and then you would kind of see it bubble up. Maybe if there's time, we'll do that.
Can you actually on slide 5, can you hide the plate and see, or no, I'm sorry, no, it's 3 to 4. Can you hide the plate in 3 and can we watch it just morph?
Yeah, let's do it.
Because I think that's I think you can kind of appreciate the shape and how it, you can kind of see how it's morphing into that second state, which is really kind of cool. I mean, there's no other feature in PowerPoint, nothing in the animation that's really going to make that, sort of changing shape of an element happen like that.
Okay, I'm seeing a question. Is the 3rd slide required in this example? This one here? It is to do the kind of flow effect that we're trying to do. Because we have to have a place where the gradient starts before we can. Otherwise, it's just the morph is gonna be missing that beginning state, and it's just gonna fade that gradient in.
I'd also say like that you could potentially make it happen, but the way that Tammy, the way that you've laid it out is that it's a little bit more intuitive. You can kind of pace out your elements. And it really kind of depends on how your brain works, right? If you really wrap your head around how this sort of keyframing concept works, and you're like, oh, I got this, like, boom, 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 then maybe you could kind of skip that, but and play around with the settings and see if it plays well. But by adding that in and making sure that element or that introduction of that element is in there individually, I think that's where, Tammy, you're kind of organizing that to make sure it's hitting all those cylinders or hitting all those elements.
I mean, that's how I would start. And then, try to see what happens if you get rid of it.
Yeah.
And we could definitely try it. We'll try it if there's time.
Yeah. It's definitely a lot of experimentation and capabilities here. It's sort of, it opens up a lot of possibilities and potential for what you can do with it. But yeah.
Yeah. There's no one way to do any of this, right? So,
but there is definitely a reason why you had that 3rd slide in there, even though it looks identical to 2, because you insert that element that's hidden otherwise.
Yep. We can also play around with things like, what if this, I don't know, what would happen if we did that?
Yeah.
Let's see. That's kind of cool, except there was that hard edge. So
yeah.
But we could
soften that. Maybe start it from a circle, and it could go. That's the other. You can start really playing with these sort of shape tween or that shape morph. That you can kind of create lots of different cool effects.
So real quickly, I want to show you so the ending state of our gradient is where design starts hiding. So that then this is like frame 1 of design, right? And then this is where it comes in. And so other thing we could do is we could kind of, everything arrives at the same moment, but we could stagger when they start, or I'm sorry, how far away they are, and just get something a little bit interesting there. So I'm just kind of staggering those, and then let's do the same here.
Yeah. They're traveling from different distances at the same rate, or not at the same rate, actually. They're given the same amount of time to get to their final destination, so they'll come in at different rates, which is just adding a little bit more production to it, that it kind of feels, makes it feel a little bit more special.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so again, this is the duration, the amount of time, 2 seconds for design to come in. So let's make that a little faster. And then 2 seconds for lab to come in. I want to make that even faster. Oh, and then as you can see, I got to turn this back on. All right, so now let's see what this looks like. Oh, whoops. Did I make that slower? Looks like I did. Oh, I did. Yeah, I didn't want to do that.
But you can see it. You can already tell. These are pretty sophisticated, sort of professional level design kind of standards that you're kind of bringing to this with a very simple animation process.
Right. And I feel like this doesn't look like PowerPoint animation. And that's what I like about the Morph transition.
Yep.
So for people who are familiar with the animation pane, they might not like that they've got 6 slides eating up, their animation. And so I don't have a great answer for that, except that I don't know if people are using segments in PowerPoint, but I'm going to select all of these. I'm going to insert, section, sorry.
Yep.
And then I'm going to title this animation. And then, you can collapse this. So, we could have, I'm going to add a new slide. So this is buggy. If I add a new slide, it already includes it in that segment. But if I select it and do like new section, now that's a separate one. And we'll make this one, just for the sake of seeing the difference, I'm just going to put some text on that. Transition. Okay, so now, just so you can see, you can kind of, organize it that way, where if it bothers you that you've got extra slides, you can chunk up your slide decks like this, which I didn't know that was a thing either. And so once again, here's our animation. So that slides in. We can play around with that still. We can keep tweaking this. And now it's waiting, right, until I click. And now here's the beginning of our presentation. And every slide after this is going to be your presentation. And that animation doesn't have to be at the beginning. It could be wherever, as long as you're careful about what you have going on over here.
Yeah, you gotta watch the settings in the transition section. But
and so with a couple, even just maybe a minute, I'm going to insert, because here's the thing I really wanted to show. I'm going to, if we're ready, I'm going to insert a 3D model into a slide here. I go to Insert, 3D Models, this device. So PowerPoint now has these stock 3D models. I mean, 3D emojis or high heels, that may work for your presentation, but probably not. So if we close that and we just insert 3D models from this device, then you can export something from like Chimera, if you're using that, or PyMol, or whatever you're using to kind of visualize your molecules. You can now bring these into PowerPoint. I didn't know this at all. They have to be a GLB file. So I can tell you that Chimera X does export a GLB. I don't know if anything else does.
Tammy, does it have to be this file format for Windows as well? Or is this mostly, is this specifically a Mac thing?
Good question. So based on all like the troubleshooting I did, I am told that you can insert an OBG file into Windows and it will come in with color because it will have a .mtl, a materials file, if it's in the same directory, but it doesn't work on the Mac. On the Mac, it'll bring in an OBG and it'll just be like white or grayscale. And then sometimes it didn't even work for me. So all I can tell you is this GLB, it is Microsoft's preferred format. It will work on both platforms.
Right.
And it's the only one that will work on the Mac.
Okay.
And then as you can see, I can rotate this model. And so using the same morph transition, elements or procedure that we've talked about, I can duplicate this slide and then I can change this position however I want. I can add the morph. That's what it's going to do on your slide. I can change the duration if I want that to happen more quickly or more slowly. And then the nice thing is, let me close this. If I have this selected and I go to Format, Object, I get the Format 3D model, right? And if I go over here, this is where if I didn't want to do it manually, if you're a numbers person, you can kind of do it that way. There's also this camera, and so you can zoom in or out, right? So you could really get in there.
I almost want you to set up like where you're zooming into that creating. I mean, there's so much cool stuff you could do with this, really.
I have a better model that we can actually zoom into. I made a model of cast 3. There's a ribbon, so we can really like dive into this structure. So again, I'm going to duplicate Command D that slide. And then let's go into that camera. Always pick the wrong one first. And then just make sure that I have the morph transition set. And so one caveat is that this is processor intensive, and I think it will make your file pretty big, but how cool is that?
But I think a lot of people have computers getting faster and faster. And, I think this is going to be the bar for entry for this is going to get lower and lower anyway. So, but what a great effect.
And I could still, I could still rotate, you can just do all kinds of stuff. You can't change the color in PowerPoint. So you'd want to make sure you had that set in Chimera X in my case. And I do feel like there's a slight color shift in PowerPoint. I don't have a good solution for that. But I did notice that the color shifted a bit.
I mean, I think that's just a color management issue that I don't think, these files aren't being color managed, or they're not having ICC files associated with them while they're, moving from or being exported. But what a great way to create an animation in a very intuitive way. Because at this point now you can export these videos too, and you can use those. You don't necessarily have to use these as active 3D models or live 3D models. You can just create videos and insert those again to keep file sizes low or whatever that might be.
Yeah, so you could use your PowerPoint file to make a video if you needed to incorporate, if you don't have animation software, or if you need to incorporate, just going to set this, so I wish I could loop it. If you don't have animation software, you could use this to make a video. You could add text, annotations, whatever else you would put into a slide deck. You could export this whole thing as a video if that, workflow works for you. Yeah. Now I want to see what it looks like if we play this whole thing. So let's go. All right, remember I had that on click for the next one. So now we're at a presentation. Now we're just clicking through our presentation. How cool.
It's a little jittery on us, but I wonder if it's
for
you.
It wasn't for me. So
yeah. It's smooth. That's what I suspected.
That's a bummer. Yeah, no, it was totally smooth here. So yeah, that's probably a Zoom thing.
Yeah.
So we have a little bit left. I can take questions about this, or let me stop sharing. Or we can try to see what happens if we get rid of that third slide. If you want to, or you can ask about anything.
And you want to troubleshoot that, or see how you could optimize it even further.
Let's do it. Unless there's questions. I'm going to get rid of. All right. So we wanted to know what happened if we got rid of this. So my guess is.
Well, do you have? Is your element hiding under there?
No, because that's the slide that they wanted to get rid of.
Oh, right. No,
right?
Well, you definitely have to have that appear at some point.
So this is just going to fade. Oh,
yeah.
What happens if we put it on this slide? Okay, let's get rid of it first. Let's see what that does.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that this dome shape is just going to fade in.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's check it out. Yeah. That's exactly what, if there isn't a match on both ends, Morph just fades in.
Yeah.
Okay,
the reason why I like that question is because it really does sort of validate how complicated it can kind of be, and how you got to really stay on top of, what kind of elements are happening in each one. I think that's either way you're going when you're working with animation, and working with these keyframes. It's not perfectly intuitive. You get used to it, and you can get very familiar with it, but it's hard to wrap your head around or keep track of all those elements that are happening sequentially.
Now, what if we just added it to this frame? Like we got rid of 3 and we put our starter gradient on 2. We'll see what happens there if we try to do that.
Yeah, there are limitations. So the way it, you saw it sneak in there at the very end, because again, all the animations are ending at the same time point. So if it didn't exist before, it's going to fade in and it'll start, it'll just last that same duration. And that's why we see that kind of come up before that other one finishes. That's where you can get a little bit more of that, like I was, layering the animations. You can do that a little bit more easy using the animation pane, but not, but yeah, it has its limitations, obviously.
Yeah, even that, if I tried to move it off the screen.
Oh, yeah.
But the problem is, we have this nice little like white area here, so it peeked out through that.
Yeah, you had it hidden there strategically.
Yeah. So I had that frame specifically very quick, just sort of introduce the gradient so then we could grow it after that.
Yeah.
All right, good questions. Any other questions? Is everyone ready to try out the Morph?
I hope so. Is anybody going to dive into this? I really do hope that people there's some, so there was a couple of links. Did we link to some stuff in Slack? So
I did. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'd urge everyone to go check those out. I think we'll probably also include that in the YouTube post too, but some great other people that we've learned a lot of stuff from have posted some great tutorials on adding animations to their slides as well. So I urge you guys to go check those out. Some insane stuff that I think is not very particular, or not, I wouldn't necessarily expect to see people in the science world doing. Just really beautiful slide decks that are very presentation oriented, just high production value presentations, but wow, inspiring. And it really does make you think like, oh, what else might be possible with it? It's a fantastically powerful tool.
Yeah. And like I told you, I'm going to try using where I edit points. I'm going to try to make a membrane channel open and close.
Yeah.
Because even though I just said that editing points can be really messy, and it can, I think if you keep it really simple, it's so satisfying to see something change shape instead of just move, a little bit of that conformational change. I think can be just elevate your presentation or your animation and make it that much more professional. So I'm going to try that, and we'll see what we can do with that.
Yeah, I think that's a great plan. I think you're also kind of a glutton for punishment, because it is so hard to animate and do that sort of stuff. And and I think we tried to do a little bit of that, and some of it kind of failed. It really is. There are some edges to it, but yeah, when it works, it works. And I want to see where the edges are. That's what. I look forward to seeing that.
And we have animation software, but if you don't, you can make really great looking animations in PowerPoint within certain limits. And so I would love to see more of that happening at Gladstone, and especially in science, where feasible.
Yeah, absolutely. There's just better storytelling wherever it can happen. Tammy, what do we got? What's our next session about? We're also it's going to be coming at the very end of January. We're squeezing in 2 this month. What's that going to be?
Posters.
Yay, posters. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So posters in PowerPoint, posters in Illustrator.
All right. We're moving out of PowerPoint. Thank goodness.
Although, it'll be interesting to do a survey of who uses PowerPoint for their posters and who uses Illustrator.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
My guess is it's going to be 50-50, but we have templates for both. And then we can kind of go through how to use the templates and maybe how to modify them. And
tips for both for sure. And a lot of the principles are just going to apply to both, because they're universally true no matter what application you're using. They're just good design principles. So well, very cool. Okay. Well, thanks everybody. And
thank you.
See you again later this month.
Hopefully. Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye.